Right, what's going on, people? It's your host Double Edge, and I'm bringing you another episode of Music Industry Opened Up. Right, basically, the topic of discussion today is the Grand Old Duke of York. Right, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a pretty surface level analysis of the song, because when we were young and in primary school, being taught by our tutors certain songs and rhymes, we kind of thought that they were just like, you know, fun rhymes, and we didn't really think too much about them. But as we've gotten older, we're able to analyse them and understand the reason as to why they were made. So this is my perspective on why the Grand Old Duke of York is the way that the Grand Old Duke of York is. Alright, let's start. So let's look at the song. Right, firstly, it goes, "Oh, the Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up. And when they were down, they were down. And when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down." I'm not claiming that I can sing the song very well. I'm just giving you perspective as to what I'm talking about. So we've got the lyrics now, yeah? So let's look at the first section. "Oh, the Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men." Firstly, we know that he's a duke, so he holds quite a lot of authority, effectively. It's of York, York being a fairly established place at the time when the song was made, I'm assuming. And he's grand, so he's considered quite respected. Or, you know, large scale, he probably has a lot of resources. We also have to understand that he had 10,000 men. How does a person obtain 10,000 men for whatever purpose they're looking to do? You know, so we have to assume he's, you know, put an army together because he's got 10,000 men that are coming together on a common purpose. So, you know, he's got his 10,000 men. He's obviously rallied his troops together for whatever reason he's looking to march them together for. 10,000 men, you know. You got to have a lot of charisma, you got to have a lot of drive, and your recruitment scheme needs to be on top. You need to have a really effective recruitment strategy. I'm guessing the guy travelled across the country, you know, did a couple campaigns, maybe was quite charitable and put favour into different places. I don't think at the time when the song was made that York even had 10,000 citizens in it. So we have to assume that he attacked York itself and the surrounding areas also. Let's just assume it's within that sort of district, basically, as well as a couple more areas that are connected to it. So this guy's obviously rallied people together. He's sent out, you know, recruitment specialists or whatever, and they've gone and contacted the other men across the country and whatever may have you. Right, so had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again. Now this is the point that it gets a bit confusing, I'd say, for some people as to why he'd do that. Why would you march 10,000 men up to the top of a hill, only to then follow up by marching them down again? What would have been the reasoning behind that? Right. I'm going to say that he probably did that to strengthen their legs. You know, they needed a bit of stamina in their legs. They needed a bit of endurance, because they're an army at the end of the day, potentially. We're going to assume that they are. They're an army. They're strengthening their legs. You know, they're building their stamina. Their core muscles will obviously be affected by this as well. Marching them up the top of the hill. We don't know how big the hill was, but we have to assume it was a big hill because it had to accommodate for 10,000 men. So let's say it's a massive hill, right? This massive hill is obviously going to do a lot for these 10,000 men. March them up. You're going to gain your you know, your resistance and your stamina on the up climb. The down climb, however, is obviously a bit easier on you. So you probably rested when you got to the top of the hill for however long it took to rest 10,000 men. Once you've rested, you recovered. You then go down the hill. You're obviously exerting yourself in that respect as well. So he's marched them down the hill. So when they were up, they were up. So for this point, I'll say this is more for the benefit of the youth that are listening to the song, because we're trying to learn about directions now. So we're trying to associate the direction up with them being at the top of the hill, and the same for the down, but just basically for that, just for the adverse perspective. So we're learning our up and we're learning our down, if that makes sense. And we said it twice because repetition obviously helps for us to memorize in our subconscious, and also on our frontal lobe, I believe it is, and also our conscious mind. So, and when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down. So now we're suggesting the element of balance into things. So again, if you're a young child and you're learning about up and down directions, you're learning about halfway up, which suggests that you can be in the middle. You don't have to be all or nothing, basically. So we learn these kind of concepts through rhyming patterns and through songs when we're young. So we also have to assume that there was one point when they may have stopped. So they got to the halfway point. The Duke of York, he's marched his men together. He said, look, men, we need to have a rest now. You worked your muscles for a little bit. It's time to relax, because you're going to be inefficient in war if you don't rest. So it's giving them that pause, basically, just to understand that, look, this is where you come from. This is where you're heading to, right? When he gets to the top now, they have a glance down when they rest again and say, look at the distance you've traveled from. You probably didn't even believe you could even go this far. But if you've achieved this, you can probably achieve a lot more in your lives, basically. And then it went down again. And then it was just a lot easier. So I would say overall, you know, the Grand Old Duke of York, as silly as it sounds when you just listen to it, there's a lot of complexity to it. The person that wrote the song obviously knew what they were doing, and obviously had a lot of subtext written in with it. We have to question the author's mentality on it, and also be intrigued at the same time. So I would say out of 10, for what it was worth, you know, a fairly decent song. You know, it was catchy. I'm obviously still singing it to today, because the last time I remember singing it was when I was probably like 7 years old, maybe younger than that. So it's got its purpose in the stratosphere, I'd say. I was your host, Double Edge. You know, I'm always here. You can see me on Facebook. You can see me on Twitter. You can see me on Instagram. You can see me on Snapchat even. I said I probably wasn't going to do it, but I've had to break my 11th commandment, so to speak. And I'm on the Snapster, right? You can add me on all of these services, plus more, at dbledgedep, which is dbledgedep. I am gone. Bang.